Welcome back to another video in our Basics of Bubble series. Now, in the last couple of videos we've been looking at what Bubble can do, and we've even set up our database because we're going to try and build out this Rate My Doggy website. So we set up dogs, we set up ratings, etc. And I've taken the liberty in the meantime of going ahead and adding various little images for the dogs on there. I've called that field dog picture. And what we're going to do in this video is start to take away this boilerplate, a basic kind of, I guess, template that Bubble's got for us, and we're going to replace it with design that looks like this. Absolutely beautiful monstrosity. So a couple of things to point out here. Obviously, as you saw in the first video, Bubble will give you this base page for free, right as you log in for every project. You can choose to start with a blank. I chose to start with this just to show you how it all worked. But now we're going to go ahead, clear this canvas and build our own page instead. So a few things to note. You see how these lines are drawn around the page? Well, almost everything in Bubble is part of what we call a group. It's a little element you've got down here on the left, and it's just a way of Bubble putting everything together so you can drag and drop various elements as one. So rather, if I wanted to move this up or down, rather than me having to drag each individual element, I can just go up and down like that. And I can also hit the delete key and it will disappear. I can delete this UI elements container as well. There we go. And I use that word there, container. That's how you can kind of think of a Bubble group. It's essentially a container that you can add a style to, so you can make it whatever color, look and feel you want, but you can also put various different elements in it as well. Now I've left this footer here and also this header, and you see they pop up with this little image. Well, the reason for that is these are what we call reusable elements. When I'm out and building a website, I'm going to want the global footer here to be essentially appearing on every page. And so up the left here, when I click this little bit here, I can create new pages on Bubble. By default, you've got an index page, which is your home page. You've got a 404, and then you can add a new page. You've also got these reusable elements. So look at the footer down here on the canvas. If I click here on this reusable element, it comes into a little page of its own, and I can change it, add whatever I like. I can change the words. I can say, my footer, for example, and do whatever I like. And then when I go back to the index and I scroll down, I've got the change made there. So if you want to keep a nice, consistent look of various elements across your website, that's how you do it. But for now, we'll delete that. We want to start with a nice blank canvas and go from there. So now we've got a blank canvas. If I double click that, I do have some configuration options. Clearly it's set to this kind of off-white colour on the background colour here, but we'll come back to all of that in a second. So we're trying to recreate this. Let's start by putting together the middle box that's got this repeating data group. And if you look on Bubble, you've got a few that in the left hand side here where you can pull in all the elements. You've got a few default basic stuff that you see in every single no-code tool that you're going to expect, that you're going to be familiar with from any app you've used ever. You've got text. If you want to drag text on the page and write something, I could write, hello, I'm Niall, that's my name, in case you didn't gather. So I could write that there. I'll delete that for now. I've got buttons, etc. I can bring in. And Bubble's got a few kind of unique stuff. Like you can drag this alert in, and it's just like a kind of like little box that you can pop up. Looks pretty cool. You've also got a shape where you can literally just create a shape. You can add styling options to that. I could make that, like pink if I wanted to. I'm not sure if that's the colour I've quite picked there. That's not really pink, is it? That's pink, purple. So you can play around with that, mess around with it. You can bring a map on here. One of the things that Bubble does have, which is pretty unique, is you can create dynamic maps. So you can have a map where all the little icons like this one here are generated out the database. If you want to build something like Uber or something like Google Maps, that'd be a little bit meta, but you can do it in here. You've also got all these various different inputs that are all, the usual stuff you can get on forms, putting in text, selecting from a drop down, checkbox, file uploader, etc. But what we want to focus on is groups, because that is the core of Bubble. So I can drag this group in here, and essentially what happens is any element that I then drag in, like this piece of text, when I move the group, the text will move around it. And let me just show you that. If I drag that outside the group, it won't move, but it does inside it. And so essentially this group at the minute is an invisible box. Again, I can add various different styling elements to it, and I can also select a type of content. And what that means is, if I want to either make a variable available to all of the elements within here, or if I want to make all of the elements of a particular database table available in here, then I can do that, and I can go in here and specify exactly where that data should come from. Now I'm not going to bother with that because as much as a group is good for, a few elements, keeping them together, making them look pretty, if we want to build a repeating data list, then we must use Bubble's repeating group. So I can drag that on, make it any size I like, and it immediately gives me these 4 different sections. If I double click that and I get the configuration menu, and one of the things you'll be starting to notice, by the way, is that any element, when you double click it, has a configuration menu on Bubble. When I click that, it's got this little bit highlighted red. It's asking me for the type of content. Now, again, I can specify all sorts of stuff here for this repeating data list. I can even put in my own data rather than pull it from a database. But we're going to pick our dogs database because remember, we're trying to create this here. And if I pull that out, and then, nothing happens yet, but I then have all these various different settings that I can change. I can change the layout style, so it could be vertical scrolling. I can make it a horizontal scrolling list. I can specify that it should be every single item in the database, or similarly, I can specify a fixed number of cells if I only wanted to show, 3, for example. But another way you can do that is by specifying the number of rows. So you can put, for example, we've got 3 items in our database, so I'll put 3. You can put 3, you can do columns, you can really just chop and change this layout to work however you like. And it's one of the things that really stands out about Bubble. You have so much customization. It really is unbelievable how much you can do here. And by the way, on every element, you're going to have this conditional part. Despite the fact we're making a repeating data list, this is actually not a filter. This is in fact visibility, so conditional visibility. So if you want this element to only show up to certain users or under certain conditions, you can go in here, you can start typing an if statement, if the current user's email is, Niall at NoCode.Tech, then you could say, show this or change whatever property. And the thing that I really like is it's not just about showing an element or hiding an element. You can add a new background, you can make it show up blue for a specific user, or, you could, for example, you could make the whole thing say happy birthday if it was the user's birthday, whatever you want. Tons of different conditions you can set there. But we'll go back to appearance because the one thing that we're missing is although we've said dogs, we've not went in and actually specified exactly what we want here. So when you click this menu, you'll get this little thing that pops up here, and it's very similar to Adalo's action menu that pops up, or its magic text menu if you've seen that before. But essentially it's just a menu of all the available data that you can use and pull into Bubble. So you can grab data from an external API, you can use formulas, do whatever you like, but we are going to do a search. Whenever you want to pull in specific data to a repeating group or a repeating data list, you need to do a search. And when you click type, which remember is Bubble's way of saying a database table, then you can pick dogs, and immediately you get 2 options that at least one of them will feel familiar, which is sort by. You can sort by various different things. You can sort it by the breed, for example. Is it descending, is it ascending, etc., whatever you want to do. But you can also add what we call a constraint, and a constraint is just Bubble's way of saying a filter, an if statement, a condition, whatever you want to do to specify what data you want. So I could say, show me all of the dogs where the breed equals a, where the breed equals a Samoyed, for example. Now I'm going to just delete all that for now. I don't really want to mess around with, sorting it and all that kind of thing. So I can just delete that. I can come in, do it again, do a search for dogs, and there we go. Now, even though I've set that up, you're not going to see anything on the page yet, because to make anything show up, we've got to drag in elements and start to use variables from the repeating data list. So if I drag in this little piece of text here, immediately what you're going to see is it comes up and says edit me, which any piece of text in Bubble does by default. But if you look up and down, it's now added the same repeating element across the other sections. And if I move that over there, they'll move with it. If I move it back, they'll move back with it as well. And essentially what this is telling me is because I've put an element in one part of the repeating data group, it's now going to repeat for as many pieces of data as we've got. And of course, if I come in here, I've got this little part here that says insert dynamic data. It's going to spring up something very similar to Bubble's variable menu, where I can now specify what variables I want to show here. Now I could say the current cell's dog, so this is going to refer to the current row of the repeating data group. It's calling it a cell, and we would typically call it an item in the repeating data list. And I can pick name, for example. And if I click off that, it's going to show up current sales dog's name. Now let me show you something interesting. If you remember, I've got this preview tab open. Now it's still showing as the original page it had, but if I refresh that, it is going to show up with our list. And look, where it says current sales dog's name, it's actually showing up and saying Milka, Mocha, Honeybee, you know, pulling that data out of our database. So we've just created a repeating data list where the data is actually coming out of our repeating data list. And, you know, we can make changes to that, do whatever we like. I could come in here and say, right, change the style to heading to dark. And one of the things I really like about Bubble is you don't have to like go through a publishing process or anything. When you're in dev mode, all you've got to do is refresh that page again. And just like that, it will show up the various changes that you've made. Now, that's clearly looking a little bit all over the place. If I drag that down, it'll look better when we go back. But, you know, let's make a few changes just to make this stand out and look pretty cool. So I'm going to select my repeating data group and I'm going to go and edit the style. So I can create a new style actually, and I can call that dog group or whatever I like. And it will kind of say like, you know, what element is this styling? Well, clearly I'm styling a repeating group. And it can tell me, you know, do I want to use an existing style? But if I hit create there and then I hit edit that style, then it brings me to this menu here. If you remember from the overview, I pointed out that, you know, rather than configure every element on every individual configuration box, which would take you a long time, you can manage these styles that are then reusable, or essentially these looks and feels, these colours, these, you know, background styles, whatever you want to call them, you can manage them all in one place. So I'm going to get that nice, ugly, yellow, mustard looking colour from there. I wrote it down. The hex for that is F3 FFC6. And remember, if you are struggling to find a decent colour, then just go on our colour generators section on NoCode.Tech, and we've got plenty of tools there that will let you do it. So I've just set that. Oops, I don't want to hit add style, sorry, the style is saved by default. And if I come back here, set to dog group, well, it's not showing through just yet. I don't think I've saved my colour properly. Let's just quickly see, and we can also make that the style for all new repeating groups, which I quite like, by the way. F3 FFC6. So we select that. Oops. F3 FFC6. Select that, hit enter. That should pull it through. And you can change anything else you want here. You know, you can change like the background colour to say a flat style. Oh, that's what I was doing wrong. Apologies. That's what happens when you film a video at this time of night. So if I set that there, that will set my background colour. What I was actually setting up there was the separator colour, or the border. So don't worry too much about that. If I pop now back to the design, there you go. We've got that colour. It's not quite right. I probably wrote it down wrong or something, but it looks more or less the way that we wanted it to. So we're going to add a few more elements in here. Clearly we've got the name. If I look back at what we're trying to build, we've also got the breed, we've got the rating, we've got the description. And if I drag this text in here and we insert dynamic data, again we can do the breed, for example. And we can drag that there. And we could also add something else for the description, do a slightly bigger text box. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to hit insert dynamic data, current sales dogs. This time we'll do description. And what I'm going to do for this one is just drag it out a little bit because there's going to be a lot of text in there. And then if I move this along slightly, and one of the things that you'll see, by the way, is these little lines show up when I'm moving this. Watch this. See that line in the blue that's just showing up there? That's just telling me that this element is vertically aligned with all of these, and that's just how you make sure something kind of stays nice, good looking, etc. I've dragged these up and down a little bit. Let's just get a little bit more space in here, and we will put in, maybe move this over a little bit more, we will put in a picture of the dog. Now it's just disappeared, don't worry too much about that, the element is still there. It's just not bringing up the description text properly. If I could double click in here, and I can upload an image if I wanted a static one, but clearly I want to pull it out of the database, so I'll hit dog's picture and do that. And so if we go back, we go to the preview, we refresh it, And there you go. It's pulled in that text. It's pulled in the breed. Clearly I've messed something up with description. We'll fix that in a second. And it's also pulled in the image. Now you can do various bits and pieces. You know, if you want to make this bigger, you can drag it out like that. You know, drag it out that way. We'll just go in and fix that description there that we broke. We must have clicked something wrong. Let's just delete that and we'll start that again. But we can go here, make this bigger. Let's make that image a lot bigger, and then I'll show you how it looks on the page. Make that a fair bit bigger there. We've got the breed. We'll move the breed up there. We'll move the text in there. And, you know, you can just start to see how an interface begins to come together on Bubble. You know, it can be really, really confusing at first, but once you get stuck into it, start dragging stuff around, you know, the world's your oyster in the sense that you can just really more or less make whatever design you like. Alright, we've dragged all that in, made it a little bit bigger. Let's refresh, see if it looks better. And there you go, we made that section bigger and it starts to feel a little bit like it should. Now, you can do all sorts of stuff here in terms of the width. You know, you can make that wider by messing with that. You can drag this to be the entire width of the page, and what I can do, if I just double click above the group, I'll be able to select the configuration of the page itself. Let's go for that, again, fairly horrible green, which I've written down as well. I'll just change it in here. Some elements do like to change the background colour directly rather than mess around with the entire style, so I could just type in #1C5253, and that will get us our colour, and as you can see that matches with that. So we've got something that's starting to feel like it's coming together now. Let's drag that down a little bit. We can also go ahead and build a navigation bar. Now there's various ways you can do this. You could build it as a reusable element if you wanted, but we're just going to grab a simple group in here. Let's park that there. Drag that right along the top to build our nav bar, and that just gives us a simple nav bar we can move around and sort of play with. But what do we need? Well, we need a big bit of text that says rate my doggy. So we'll drag that in there first, and unlike before when we've been using dynamic data, I'm just going to write rate my doggy. And here I can specify a style. We've already got a heading that we've used before where it's black. Let's try it light this time since we're on a dark background. Drag that out. And whoops, rate my doggy, there we go. And if we just pull that image up again, you get this bug frequently. I'm not sure if it's a Safari thing, but quite often Bubble will, I've got a little paw print somewhere, here you go. Quite often Bubble will just hide elements. I've not fully figured out why that is. Sometimes you've got to bring them to the front, a bit like what you get on like a PowerPoint, for example. But I know that if I come in here and refresh, we're going to start to see some of these changes apply to the page. And there you go, rate my dog is there. If I just drag that, again, I'm not 100% sure why the text isn't showing up. But if I just refresh that, probably just needs a wee quick refresh of the browser to fix it. But you can see the text is essentially moving to wherever I choose to put it, which is really, really cool. So we'll go back and make a few more changes. All we want to do now is add in a really simple form. We want to just put in a form that says a user can now change the rating of a dog. So let's drag that out. And you know, unlike other various kind of different I guess no-code tools, usually you're going to drag in a form element, you know, an overall containing form block, and then put the various elements in it. Instead, what you do in Bubble is we use this group container again to kind of signify to Bubble that all these elements should be together. We're going to drag an input in to that little group. We are going to drag in, let's drag that down a little bit. We are also going to drag in a drop down for, let's say, selecting a different type of dog. We're going to drag in some radio buttons, and we'll put them there for now. Let's give this a little bit of space. And finally, we're going to drag in a button. Drag this button here, and a button will just let us at any point kick off a workflow. So for example, in this instance, we could use a button to kick off something that's going to save our dog rating data. So I'll say, you know, save rating, we'll call that. And one of the things we probably want to do actually is just pick put a little bit of text here that says So click that, put dog comment. So put that there just as a little label. Let me just set that to a light colour. We'll do H3 light. So put that there, and we're essentially telling the user this input field is for a dog comment. And I'm also just going to copy that, paste it, drag it over here, but this time I'm going to change that to dog rating. And so really quickly there we've built this nice, fairly ugly form, but fairly functional little form here. Let's drag that down, and then there's a couple of things just to show you in terms of linking data through. So first of all, let's look at our radio buttons. So you've got this option here to put choices. I want the user, I guess, to be able to rate their dog between 1 and 5. So I can do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you'll notice as I'm doing that, it's just adding these little radio buttons as I go. Now I need to drag that a little bit more just to make it all fit. But I can essentially add whatever choices I like in there. I can set the style. I'm not going to play around with too much of it, but I can set the style, do whatever I want. Again, in dog comment, nothing much to say here. Clearly, it's a nice big text field. You can do things like prevent the enter key from submitting. You can turn that on, for example. Move around with the height, all the usual stuff. And again, if you want to change the style of it, you would just pop into the styles menu on the left and look for input, standard input. You can change it all here, background color, the border, the width, etc. And then the last thing I want to show you on this is, again, with a drop down, the choices work just the same. So I could say, okay, I want my choices to be Milka. I want them to be, who else we got? Mocha. We could do Honeybee. And just the same as before, all sorts of different stuff you can do. You can bring your options in dynamically. So I could set up an option set here in the data field and bring that in. I'm not going to bother for now, but you can make that as dynamic as you want. And so if I pop over here, refresh my page, let's see the changes we've just made. And when I scroll down here, immediately I've got the ability to set a dog rating. You can pick Milka, you can pick Mocha, you can pick Honeybee. And so, I've made it look a little bit different from here. You could play around with it a little bit more and get it looking exactly the way that you want it to look. But you can see very quickly we've built a similar website. We've spent a little bit less time on the styling. But what we'll do in the next video is, if I go ahead here and pop in a little rating piece of text, then in the next video, we're going to go ahead, we're going to start assigning ratings to the dogs. And just write rating there. Right, rating, assign that to the dogs, and we'll start using workflows to actually make this all hang together, start putting ratings into the database and make it appear here where we've written rating. So jump in the next video and we'll take a little bit of a look at workflows.